Welcome to Pursuing the Muse. I'm your host, Tom Compton. Today we are joined by the legendary Justin Warfield. From signing a solo deal at 16 on Quincy Jones's Quest label to his global success with She Wants Revenge, Justin has spent 30 years thriving in a multitude of genres. Listen in as we discuss how artists like Beastie Boys made it safe for Justin to be a total weirdo in early hip-hop. Hear about the perfect storm involving Lady Gaga that gave his hit Tear You Apart a massive second life, and learn the Willy Wonka factory experience of the 90s London music scene. Justin has a new album out called Deathrock Devotionals under the band name Warfield. Let's dig in.
Camera flashes and photo shoots, sacred earth underneath your boots. Kiss, 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 kiss. Kiss, 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 kiss. Kiss, 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 kiss. And I feel like you could be a good person to spend the night with if the world starts crashing down tonight. Because everything fades away. You know that everything fades away. 'Cause if the moon's just right and you're with me tonight, we can stare up to the heavens, we can live in the light, but still everything fades away.
All right, Tom Compton here again with Pursuing the Muse. And today, I'm very excited. Today, Justin Warfield is joining us. Justin, how are you?
I'm really good. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Oh, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. You have a great new album out, Deathrock Devotionals, but you also have an illustrious and quite diverse career and a path that got you here. Going back to like the early 90s, right? You were young when you started out in the music business. And how did you get started at the young age you did? You were like 16, right?
Yeah, I was 16. Man, it's pretty wild. A very dear friend who was making music more seriously than I, meaning I was doing it for fun and had no intentions of making it, a job, a career, or something that I pursued in any serious way. He introduced me. He was like, "Hey, like, you're really good at this." It was rapping and hip hop. And he was like, "Would you like to meet my producer so you can like do this for real?" And I was like, "Well, what does for real mean?" And he said, "Well, I play shows and I go to clubs and I perform and I make records." And so he introduced me to his producer, who ended up being Quincy Jones's son. And I was friends with his sisters, but he had just moved from Sweden. He was an incredible producer. He took me under his wing and mentored me and really showed me the ropes of recording studios, about, composition, arrangement. And I learned quite a great deal from him. But it was totally accidental.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, were you able to interact with Quincy as well?
What was that?
Were you able to meet up with Quincy as well? And
yeah, so I had known his sisters Kadada and Rashida very well because we just traveled in the same social circles back in the late 80s. And then I met Quincy at the house, and he knew that I was a young artist who his son was, mentoring and producing. And then eventually he listened to a number of the projects that his son QD3 was working on and said, "This is great stuff. Why don't you put out a record on my label Quest?" And so he did a compilation record called QD3 Sound Lab. And I think in effect, it was for a way for QD3 to show the various projects he was working on, showcase his producing, and also to incubate talent. And I think also the larger idea from Quest and Quincy Sr. was find the artist that sort of resonates the most and then sign them. or multiple artists. And because my single took off and had legs, they signed me to a solo recording artist deal when I was, 16 years old. It's crazy.
Okay. And then you're kind of credited with kind of launching the trip hop genre. Is that how did that name for the genre come about? Is that just something that happened after the fact?
So I think that, I've been told back in the late 90s and early aughts, I was told by some British journalists that it possibly was conceived in an article that was written about my first album, My Field Trip to Planet Nine. On my less humble days, I would say that possibly that's true. On my more humble days, I think the truth is that what was being done by the Wild Bunch in Bristol, by Nelly Hooper and Jazzy B and Soul to Soul, and the DJs and graffiti artists and hip hop artists who would become Massive Attack, I think that they, in fact, were probably the architects of what we know as trip hop, right? And then it was passed on through other artists in the Bristol scene over years and throughout England and the UK, Europe. I think that the first time that rap music, right, and I don't mean like true British trip hop, which is sort of a collection, a combination of R&B, soul, dance music, early hip hop, and like movie soundtracks and sort of Lalo Schifrin kind of stuff in the case of like Portishead, but earlier Massive Attack was and Soul to Soul is more dance music. We were all listening to. I'm friends with Nelly Hooper, and I've spoken to him about some of the early days, and I feel that if anybody labeled my first record trip hop, it was because it was very sort of 60s psychedelic acid inspired, and so I think that it may have been used as a clever pun. But it definitely did not start the movement we now know as trip hop.
Okay. Now, is it like because you had an interest in? Is it just like your influences what just played out that way? You liked hip hop, you liked psychedelic kind of 60s stuff, and you were just merging it together, and maybe it felt fresh.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. I was thinking about this when I was driving yesterday, of all times, because we're talking about this, and I was thinking of how odd, because I was listening to a podcast, and filmmaker Josh Safdie was talking about Marty Supreme, and when he was working with Timothée Chalamet, and he said that when he first came to, there was a point where they were getting ready to work on Marty Supreme, and he was still in character as Bob Dylan from the film, and it got me thinking about Bob Dylan and how big of an influence he was on me. And then immediately my mind went to, it was so odd that when I did the album cover for My Field Trip to Planet Nine when I was 18, I wanted it to look like a Bob Dylan cover. And so I think it's just what resonates with us, what we think is cool, what feels like a part of our upbringing. I grew up on, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Jimi Hendrix, James Taylor. I grew up on, Carole King, and I grew up on, a lot of singer-songwriters from the Laurel Canyon scene in the 70s, from a lot of Beatles, a lot of, Stones, psychedelic music, that counterculture, because my parents were hippies. And I also grew up in a household that was full of R&B and soul and the Temptations and Marvin Gaye and Teddy Pendergrass and Earth, Wind & Fire and the Isley Brothers and Marvin Gaye, and like the list goes on. But when I discovered new wave and hip hop, those were the things that were mine and not my parents. And so as I started to make this sort of stew of all the things that were mine that I cherry picked, it'd be like, I want my album cover to look like Nashville Skyline or Highway 61 Revisited, right? Or like, I want it to have something, but with my own take on it. I didn't want it to look like, like some of my contemporaries. And to be totally, to give credit where credit's due, the only reason I felt safe doing that and going by my real name and showing my influences and talking about everything from, Ginsberg and Ferlinghetti to 70s pop culture references was because people like De La Soul and the Beastie Boys did it first and made it safe. Beastie Boys would routinely say their regular names on songs, and they were a huge influence. De La Soul to me made, with 3 Feet High and Rising, a record that changed hip hop, and along with Tribe Called Quest, a lot of rules were being broken, and so they broke the rules and made it safe for me to just be a total weirdo in hip hop.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like the best of both worlds of like your freshness to be different with hip hop, and then yet pulling in that history that you had and your parents had. That's very cool that you have that awareness of how that brought that about at that time, and it probably couldn't have happened at any other time, and it's almost a perfect storm.
100%. I mean, we're talking about, hip hop in 1986 was like coming out of Run DMC dominance, going into like crossing over with Beastie Boys. And then in 87, you had really seminal albums by what I consider the big sort of 3 at the time, which would be Boogie Down Productions, Public Enemy, Eric and Rakim. Then you add groups like EPMD, coming soon after, and a lot of hardcore underground hip hop. Jungle Brothers were one of the most important groups for me. But in 1988, things changed really, really, really drastically, and hip hop really changed the most, I think. The biggest change, I think, since maybe from what was like Rappers Delight, hippity hop. Like the next big jump was 88. Things were being sampled, beats were more aggressive, people were taking more chances, the rapping was more lyrical and incredible and very thoughtful. And in 89 is when a lot happened, because that's when, the Beastie Boys did, Beastie Boys, not the Beastie Boys. Beastie Boys did Paul's Boutique, and De La Soul did 3 Feet High and Rising. And that was a big deal. I was 16 years old. So that's when it was happening. You know what I mean? Yeah, right. I went overnight from like idolizing like Eric, Rakim as a rapper, and Jungle Brothers to like and Tribe Called Quest, because they were about to come out, but I'd heard early stuff they'd released with Jungle Brothers. And in 89, my brain broke open with Paul's Boutique and 3 Feet High and Rising. And then, 2 years later, you had Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back by Public Enemy and Daydream Nation by Sonic Youth. And then there was another shift. So to me, like in the moment, it sounds very like cultural critic or like writerly to frame it that way. But at the time, I knew something was happening because my ears perceived a change and it resonated with me. Some people listen to music and they're like, oh, I like the beat. You know what I mean? Or they're like, this is catchy. Like I studied hip hop and music like a lot of kids study like sports and stats and collect baseball cards. So it was my whole life, except for film and cinema. I didn't plan to get into music. I wanted to go to film school. But when my friend Kevin Hicks introduced me to QD3, and then I was on Quest Records, which had like put out like, New Order, I'm like, oh, like I'm a recording artist now, and I was still in high school. So it's a very circuitous but crazy path that has led me to this day. Yeah, it worked out well. Yeah. How did you transition to getting involved with Bomb the Bass? That's really funny. So a person who had done a lot of the early and most seminal graphic design and branding and art for most of hip hop in the 80s, whether it's the Yo MTV Raps logo, whether it's the EPMD logo, the Beastie Boy album covers, a guy by the name of Eric Hayes. I was at a restaurant with him in Los Feliz, California, and we were at a birthday dinner, and he said, hey, a friend of mine in London wants you to rap on some tracks. I'm like, that's the kind of thing that people say all the time. You're like, yeah, okay, whatever. I took it with more weight because Hayes is a legend. Besides being like one of the first wave of New York graffiti artists from the 70s, he created a lot of the visual identity of what we know as hip hop now. And he was a good friend. And so I was like, okay, I'm intrigued. Who is it? And he's like, oh, it's my buddy Tim Simenon. He's got a group called Bomb the Bass. And like, I just like my face, like my eyes lit up, and I was like, dude, I love Bomb the Bass. I've got the cassette single of Beat Dis at home. Man, he's so important musically. And he's like, I'll link you. So this is, 1994. So he gave him my phone number. He called me long distance. I gave him my address. He sent me a cassette. There was 2 instrumentals on it. I wrote a lot of lyrics. He flew me to London. We met. Within 5 minutes, I was in the booth and had done Bug Powder Dust. And then he was like, I feel like we should start a band or like do something together. And that was in 1994. And he totally changed the course of my life and was like the next musical mentor that changed the trajectory of my life. His next door neighbor was Dave Stewart from Eurythmics and was Nelly Hooper. He introduced me to Nelly Hooper. And suddenly I was, you know, a 22-year-old or 21-year-old, 22-year-old Anglophile living, you know, in London at the height of Britpop, trip hop, drum and bass, and jungle. And it was like the college experience that I never had times 1,000. I was in the middle of so many musical movements. Everything was changing in London, and it was an incredible time on so many levels. I mean, I met all my heroes. I got to work in, you know, go to Abbey Road and Olympic Studios, like everything you can imagine as a kid from the Valley who dreamed of London. I moved there because of Tim.
Yeah, it's almost like you got a golden ticket to Willy Wonka's factory and you're going from crazy room to crazy room. Did it feel like a whirlwind? Was it something you could appreciate at the time?
Every moment. You know, my memory is pretty dodgy. And there's a lot of holes, and I count on friends to fill in those holes. I don't know if it's just like, you know, too much like abuse before I got sober over 25 years ago, or I don't know if it's like the effects of COVID or aging.
Sure.
What I can tell you is you're very much right in saying it was like Willy Wonka. I've been fortunate to have many Willy Wonkas in my life who create opportunities for me. And just one quick thing is one of the most important things that I've learned in my life in music and in art and just the things I've been able to experience is that the cycle of mentorship, even if it's not spoken, if it's just implied or there, is really the most important thing. Because if, you know, it feels good to have somebody create an amazing experience for you, but nothing feels better than being able to provide that for another person. And so one of the great joys of my life is because I've had so many peak experiences, I try and create those and set up opportunities for other people to do so. Because it's not something you want to hoard or keep for yourself and then just have in your head or in a memoir. It was a whirlwind. I was very present, but also I was really prepared because when I was 16 and put out my first single, Season of the Vic, I went to New York and was hanging out with Jerobi from Tribe Called Quest, who we're so close that we've called each other cousins since, you know, 89 when we met. And he took me out in New York because I needed to find producers for my first album. And it was akin to Henry Hill walking into, you know, Paulie's social club in Goodfellas, because everyone in the world that I wanted to be around was there. And I met all of these hip hop greats. And I was so grounded and present, and it was really anchored by the fact that people were like, "Oh, we love your single." And I was like, I'm 16. I live at my mom's house in the Hollywood Hills. Like, how is it that, like, you know, Lakim Shabazz or DJ Premier or Guru or Prince Paul or any of these people, or, you know, cats from Dale, how is it that they know me and appreciate what I do? Or that I'm being taken around by the hand, like lovingly, by one of the members of one of the, if not the greatest hip hop group ever, Tribe Called Quest. So by the time I was in London, I was a little older and I was a little bit more like, okay, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing now. I mean, there were moments where I was definitely had to step outside of myself and be like, this is crazy that this is happening. And there were definitely real crazy moments. But at the same time, I stayed really present for it. And I was like, wow, I'm so fortunate that this is what I get to do around the time that most people are just like finishing up college.
Right. You had an intense education that, you know, just filled up volumes that people aren't even getting in, like reading a book about it. You're living it. So that's amazing. And before you got to the She Wants Revenge era, what are some of the highlights of, like, you know, you had Supernaut.
Yeah.
You worked with 1 Inch Punch.
Yeah.
What highlights of that era do you recall?
So like what what was happening was, by the time my hip hop album came out, 93, I was already like really, really, really deep into like Jane's Addiction and Sonic Youth and a lot of the alternative music revolution that was happening from like what people would now call the Lollapalooza generation. I went to the second, third, fourth Lollapaloozas. I was doing that, and even though there was great hip hop on the bill, whether it be like Tribe or like Cypress, like who were all friends, like I was looking at the other side of things and going like, I want to be in Jane's Addiction. I don't want to be in EPMD or Eric B. and Rakim anymore. And I didn't have the facility or the ability to do that because I didn't know how to sing yet. I didn't know how to write. I found another mentor in my life, a guy by the name of Godfrey Moore, and he was playing in my live band. We were trying to interpret the hip hop stuff. And basically, like, we just stopped playing some of the hip hop songs and like started writing new songs. And then I just called it Supernaut. So it was really like, it was never, and one of the most interesting things about like my journey of music is sometimes like I'll write down a name or come up with like a vision. And it's like, this is what it's called. But like sometimes it's just happening, and it's just like putting a name on something that's already happening. And when like the Planet Nine hip hop stuff was backed by a live band playing live shows and then in a rehearsal room writing, I just wanted to start writing stuff that was more classic rock and like Bowie inspired. And that turned into Supernaut. So I called it Supernaut. Same band, just got a new bass player, my childhood best friend, Gianni Garofalo. When that band started to die after like putting out the record and just playing around LA and just like not really being the right like fit, and I had already moved on musically, we changed the lineup and we're playing music and writing new songs. And then that I just like called it 1 Inch Punch. We moved to London and did that. And then I moved home and I started a band called Tape. 1 Inch Punch is one of the things I'm most proud of musically because it combines the indie rock I was into, the classic rock I grew up on, and the hip hop in a very seamless and beautiful way. And I'm really proud of that record. I struggle with the Supernaut record because it feels a little bit like looking at like a junior high prom picture where you have like zits and like a bad haircut. But that's fine. It's like Lou Reed said, you're growing up in public. When I moved back to the States in 99, in the beginning of 99, I started a band with some friends called Tape. And it's not well documented, but we're going to put it up on streamers in the first quarter of this year. We did 3 EPs. It's one of the most amazing bands I've ever been a part of. And we did that from 99 to 2003. And in 2003, I started working with Adam Braven, who I'd known. We started doing hip hop production. We started a hip hop group called The Spits, and then realized we really didn't want to do hip hop. And he did a song that was intended for our friend Kenna. I listened to it and I was like, you can't give this to Kenna. Like, I want to sing on this. And I did, and I played guitar, and that's how She Wants Revenge was created. So like that covers from like 1991 with the hip hop stuff we started with through 2003, 2004, She Wants Revenge was, came out. We first played and toured in 2005 in support of Block Party and the Electric Six and OK Go. And by 2006, 20 years ago, our first album came out, and then sort of here we are.
Right. And would you consider Adam Braven your first like peer collaborator?
That's no, but that's a really interesting question. He's the first peer collaborator in this way. So in Bomb the Bass, at first I was a vocalist who was brought in. By the end, and he was my mentor, right? By the end of Bomb the Bass, we were like partners in it. And I was like a part of Bomb the Bass, and we did an album that was never released. And that was like, that means that's like, but that was like the summation of like meeting him in like 95. And then like by the end of 98, we were like working together. So that's like 3.5, almost 4 years, because at the beginning of 99, we became like more like not equals, but like it was different footing. And then another mentor that I didn't mention is I met Atticus Ross and his wife, an incredible composer and musician named Claudia Sarn. They were another set of mentors that were really important and influential in my life in many ways. We were hanging out in London and then in LA. When I did 1 Inch Punch, Gianni Garofalo, it was just a duo. It was just the two of us. So even though like I wrote a lot of the songs and like would bring stuff in, that was a partnership. When I did Tape, that was the first band I ever did that was a true democracy. And it was like 5 people I think 5 people, 4 or 5, like 4 people. And it was a democracy. When I did She Wants Revenge, it was a duo. And Adam was the first person that I had worked with who came from a similar place as I did, meaning other people, we had always had like 1 or 2 touch points that we connected on. And that's why, it's like any relationship. You're like, you're into this, I'm into this. Oh, but you're into these other things. And that's something I can learn from. With Adam, we were both from a hip hop background. We were both from the Valley. We were both Jewish kids. Like there was a lot of things to resonate on. I would be like, I love Depeche Mode. He's like, I love Depeche Mode. He'd be like, I love Speak and Spell and Some Great War, and I'd be like, oh, like I'm into Violator and Music for the Masses. And then we talk about soundtracks, and we both loved Giorgio Moroder, and we both loved Tangerine Dream, and we both loved Vangelis, and we both loved Prince. And like, it was the first person that I had tons in common with like that. But the dynamic was different because he had never been in a band. He was always a music producer. So in the beginning, I was sort of the mentor there, but then it quickly turned into like, we created this band and this thing, and it couldn't have been what it was without his taste, his sensibility, the things he knew and didn't know at the time musically, and also his filter where he'd be like, I love this song, but maybe you changed this thing. Whereas never before had anybody really been like, maybe you changed this thing. So it's a really great dynamic that brings out the best in both of us.
Very cool.
And now, 20 years later, the dynamic's something totally different because we've lived a huge life together, and we've lived many lives separately, and we can bring all that to the table when we make a new album. And it's like, oh, like this is what you're doing, this is what I'm doing. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it gives you a perspective and appreciation. What was it like when you got Tear You Apart onto American Horror Story? Was that a trip, or how did that come about?
Somebody called me and said some music supervisor wants to put Tear You Apart in American Horror Story. Do you have the session or the stems? The audio files. I found them. I told Adam. We said, that sounds great. We sent it off. We had no idea whether they're going to use 10 seconds or what. And to have a needle drop beginning to end, basically a free and paid music video for our song, years after our sort of star had already dimmed and we were on the sort of like plateaued trajectory of that sort of peaks and valleys of the industry, to have Lady Gaga, who we knew was already a fan, acting with us as the music in something that was an homage to a Bauhaus video. I'm sorry, for the movie The Hunger, starring Bauhaus, and in the scene, which we had already lifted for a video of ours. It was just the perfect storm that one couldn't plan. So this great music supervisor, PJ Bloom, was a part of it, and obviously Lady Gaga and, Ryan Murphy. But what really happened is I found out later through a friend of mine who was doing sound recording on the set, is that when Lady Gaga sat down to do her first scene, she gave her iPad to the sound man and said, so I can get in character, play my playlist. And the first song on the playlist was Tear You Apart. And Ryan Murphy ran in the room, was like, what is this? She's like, what? You don't know this? Like, everybody knows this song. And so it was really Gaga's doing. And so we're immensely grateful because overnight we had a second life.
Yeah, the spotlight came back. That's fantastic. And then would you consider the work you're doing now that you're launching Warfield, as like your first like solo, like this is you and you alone, like standing up with this? Because you've had so much collaboration, you've had so much co-writing, co-working, co-producing. Is Warfield a new turf in a way?
Well, the solo things that I do are generally, I will say this. I did My Filter to Planet 9 as a solo album with producers. I did a 20th anniversary mixtape called the Black Hesh Cult Mixtape, which was a hip hop album I did. 20 years later, that was a solo record with some producers assisting. I did a song for Sons of Anarchy under my own name. These are all mostly things in my own name. And I did a record during COVID in 2020 that was released, I guess, a little over a year and a half ago, called Forever Never Changes, which is a solo project. But that's a different exploration of sort of shoegaze, Britpop, true 90s alternative rock. This is the first solo project I've done that exists in a post-She Wants Revenge world in which I've found, having found a voice both literally and figuratively over the last 20 years in She Wants Revenge. It's the first time I made a solo record that acknowledges that, rather than going, I'm going to run the car off the road and go the other way and go as weird as outside as. I was just like, I want to write songs that I'm feeling right now that I can arrange, write, record, produce, do all by myself, play the keyboards, the programming, everything. And though I did bring in collaborators, it's been a pretty fun experience. And in doing so, I tried to make sure that it stood apart from She Wants Revenge, even if the same type of palette could understand that sort of flavor. And now that She Wants Revenge is making a new album, it's so different from Warfield. It's really nice that the two things could coexist, but also like have their own sort of identity. And you know, Warfield is punky and high energy and fun and youthful and exuberant and just sort of has an immediacy to it. And She Wants Revenge to me is a more sort of pensive, sexy, dark dance music type of band.
Sure, kind of scratches different itches, but they're all, you know, authentically yourself.
Very much, but obviously, you know, very, very different when you bring in a collaborator. So like, no matter what I bring to She Wants Revenge, like there's another equal partner who's going to be creating that music and the everything with you. So it's gonna be different. Just like it's like if someone's in a room with you and you're writing a song, it's going to be different than if you're alone. So let alone when you're writing something with someone. So yeah. Right.
And do you have a preference? I mean, at this point, or is it maybe a mood on a day of co-writing versus creating something on your own?
You know, the thing that's, I don't have a preference. Right now, I'm just very grateful that I have two projects I can express myself in musically, and both have incredible live bands to interpret the music live. And so I feel very fortunate.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the new album. It's a fun album, and I mean, death rock is an interesting genre, right? It evokes some of the LA in the late 70s, and yet it's very fresh and it feels very current. So it's a very cool accomplishment of what you've done. And like, for example, the song Fades has such a strong hook. It's such an earworm. Is that what you were going for coming out of the gate with that as a lead track?
I don't think about things in those terms. I think that, you know, I suggested maybe that's a single, and the guys at Cleopatra felt the same. I never write with that sort of intentionality of like, I want to write something catchy. It's really hard for me to write something that's not repetitive and catchy because I love repetition in music, and I'm not a sort of jammy person, and I don't often just create soundscapes and moods unless it's doing something for film or with intentionality to do so. So like, to me, like the act of songwriting is about writing something catchy, but not for anybody else. But I don't know, I guess we just felt like Fades was one that would be a good lead off. and it's not. I mean, actually, I'm sorry. You got me mixed up. All the Fun is the lead-off single.
Oh, okay. Because
yeah. So the reason I led with All the Fun was because when I was talking to the label, like, what do you think is a single? And I'm like, All the Fun. They're like 100%. The reason I felt that way is because it was the first song that was written specifically for this record. A couple of the songs had been song ideas that had been in another form and repurposed and re-recorded and rewritten to be on this record. But the first song that was written like for this record before I knew it was a record was All the Fun. And it felt like a mission statement. And it felt like this is like a declaration of something. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? So I knew that because that's how it hit me when I heard it. And when I played it to the guys I play with, that it would probably fall on ears in a similar way. And so that was why it was the first single.
Okay. Yeah, it has a rollicking chaos to it that is a lot of fun. What's interesting to me is because you put out Deathrock Devotionals as 2 EPs before it became the album entity that it is. What was the approach with that? How did that strategy come about?
I mean, the idea was to create, I mean, starting from scratch with no audience, right? A new band, 0 followers on social media, on streaming services, only my social media reach, and then like yelling out into the ether, hey, this is a new thing. So it's like you want to make it gradual, and you want to find your audience, and you also want to leave breadcrumbs. And for me, I always conceived of the project as 3 EPs and an album. Originally, I wanted it to be 3 EPs and a double album. And then by the time I had done the videos, written songs, recorded, lived life, I was like, there could be 3 EPs here. But like, if you really want like bangers, like it's really 2 EPs and a couple B-sides and the album. And so I trimmed that down. That was always the plan. And, it didn't need to be a double album at that point. So it was always intended to be. I mean, when I brought it to Cleopatra, I said it's going to be 3 EPs and an album, and here's what it's called. And it's volume 1 and volume 2, and then the album. It was all very methodically planned out. Okay. And I've been very, very fortunate that they at Cleopatra understand the vision and support what I'm doing. And it's been really fun. And, I didn't know how it was going to be received. And so far we played a tour of Eastern Europe and a few shows around, Western Europe, like Paris and UK. And it's been wonderful. And this year we're going to do, we're playing at the Grauzoon Festival at The Hague in Amsterdam on, was it February 6th? And that's going to be amazing. And then we're going to be playing more shows and tours in Europe and the UK this year, and North American tours this year as well.
Nice. Coming through Chicago at all?
Oh, for sure. It's just a matter of when.
All right. I will keep my eye out. I gotta watch that Bandsintown app.
Yeah.
So tell me about If the World Starts Crashing Down Tonight. It's got the jangly guitar and it kind of morphs. Can you give us a deep dive of how that song came to you and how you captured it?
Yeah, so like I wrote it on guitar and then had this guitar riff and immediately programmed the beat, and it was like this shuffly thing, and I was like, oh man, that sounds a lot like a Johnny Marr or Smith's kind of thing. And so all the vocal ideas that were coming to me were too much like that. And so I didn't record the song for like maybe like 8 months or something, because I was like, I just want to get that out of my brain. If the guitar part already felt jangly and like a sort of Johnny Marr thing, I definitely didn't want to sing in that vein. And then it was getting to be like time to like finish that song. And so I took the demo, I like added guitars, beefed it up, finished the track. And then I was driving in downtown LA one day, because I write most of my melodies and some of my lyrics while driving and just like listening to the song. And I just started singing it. And I went, Actually, wait, no. The chorus, I always had the verse melody. The chorus was way too sounding like something from Smiths or something. And I'm like, I can't do that. So I had the verse idea. It was always, all my secrets can't be named. And it always felt like very Doorsy to me in a cool way. And I was like, I like that. But I'm like, I'm not recording this song. And the chorus wasn't working. So I went in later. I completely chopped out all of the guitars and bass of the chorus. It was like, the problem is that I can't think of anything else, and I'm limited musically. So I played different chords. I played different bass. I filled in these sections of the chorus with new music. And then I listened, and while driving one day, it came to me. But certain things were always there, like the hey, 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 the sort of blues, sort of, and like, you know, to me, it's like a real interesting mix. It's basically my version of a Brit trying to do American blues and rock and roll.
All right. Put that in the pot, stir it around, and pretty cool stuff comes out.
Yeah.
Nice. What was the song on the record that felt like it took the most processing to fully get out?
By processing, what do you mean?
Like, it's in your head. I mean, it sounded like that was the experience to an extent with If the World Starts Crashing Down Tonight. But were there any that were like even more of a struggle? Or do most of your records or most of your songs come like really fast, like it's inspiration and boom, it's there?
Yeah, they do. I mean, you know, all the fun, I literally just like either picked up a bass or a guitar, started playing the part, was like, this is great, turned on the drum machine, made it go as fast as it felt until it felt right, put down the drums, you know, played the guitar, played the bass. Song was done within 2 hours. And the vocals came very fast. You know, sometimes I'll do a song and then I'll completely redo the vocals and just new melodies, new words. I did that. See the Distance, See the Truth started in another way where it was, it's a long story, but like See the Distance, See the Truth, it started in another form. And then I changed all of the music and all of the chords under what I was singing. And then I wasn't happy with it. And so I changed it again. And then I think I changed it again.
Wow.
And that happens sometimes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But not a lot.
When you rework a song like that, do initial drafts ever like creep back in, like a piece of melody or a turn of phrase, or does it just become completely new?
Well, in that instance, the vocals stayed the same the whole time. I just changed the music under it and the drums. I just like literally took it down to where it was just a vocal and replayed everything.
Okay. Got you. And then,
which I've never done that before. You know, with She Wants Revenge, sometimes, you know, we'll do a song or Adam will write something and then I'll get it and I'll sing it. And I think that I love it. And then he'll make some notes. And then a week later, I'm like, I hate that. And he's like, I think you could beat it. And then I'll just completely rewrite it. And then it's a whole new song, but everything musically stayed the same. So you never can really say. When I do stuff for Warfield, part of the thing is it's never too labored and it's very like immediate. I'm like, there it is, feels good, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Is it not wanting to lose that spark, that initial energy that's there?
I think that's a part of it. I also think that trusting first instincts.
Okay. And that's over time, that's something you've grown to appreciate, that you've got that, right? You've got. Sometimes
we have recency bias and we love something. Sometimes something will be in my head after I record it and it'll be in my head for 2 or 3 days and I'll be like, it'll be stuck in my head, but it'll make me hate it. And then that, if I still like it, if it still feels right, that's a good sign. Sometimes like space is good. Sometimes it's great to like, and the other thing about immediacy is if you just do it and capture the moment, you're not releasing it. So just walk away, listen to it in a week, in a month, and see how you feel. And then you're like, oh, this is great. Like,
Nice.
that space is important.
Nice. When in She Wants Revenge, you've got Adam there. Do you have somebody that you bounce ideas off of with Warfield? Or are you just trusting that instinct?
I'm trusting that instinct. And when I give it to somebody, meaning like either, in the beginning it was Thomas, Froggatt, and Spencer Rollins who play in the band with me. And now it's also Mr. Pharmacist, Greg Foreman on keys, and Delano Duran on drums. In the beginning, when I gave it to him, it wasn't like, what do you think? Or any notes. It was just, here's a new song. And then sometimes it was, learn it because I want you to play like play guitar or bass on it. So it's a different thing. Like, I'm giving them stuff that's like, here, this is it.
Are you giving them arrangements, or how much freedom do they have to invent parts for their own instruments?
The song is completely done, and then they just replay. Like, Thomas will come in and just, like, for example, like, there was a couple of songs that like I wrote with Thomas, like Get Away Far Away was a song, and I thought it was a great song, but it was too poppy. He came in and he heard it. He's like, it's cool. I'm like, I don't want to do this today. I muted everything and left the drums. We started playing over the drums, and we wrote Get Away Far Away, the verse and the chorus together. I worked on the bridge later by myself. I went and did all the production, singing everything. And then he's like, oh, wow, that song turned out great. More off, another song was, a lot of times, like, all the fun, song's done. Then I'll play it for them. And I say, hey, Thomas, do you want to come in and replay the bass? And he goes, do you want me to play it like you played it? Or do you want me to like change it? I'm like, I want you to stay pretty straight to what I did. And he'll play it. And he replays it. He plays it better than I do. He's a bass player. It would have been fine with me on it. Like, no one would have like been like, oh, that's not good bass playing. But I want him to be a part of it. I want him to feel like when he hears that, like, that's his hands on that. That's his playing and interpretation. Sometimes I'll just be like, and usually we'll say, play it exactly like it, and let's do a take where you just like do a couple takes exactly like it, and do one to just throw something at me that's a curveball. And quite often those curveballs are the things where I'm like, oh, that's great, let's add that. Same thing with Spencer on guitar. He played guitar in almost every song on the record. Yeah, so it's like it's pretty much like, this is what it is. But having said that, now that it's a live band, I think that subsequent records would be different, and I'd be interested in doing some stuff live and then taking it off and playing with it on my own and then finishing it. So we'll see,
When you play these songs live, do they stretch out? Do you build them more, or take them different places?
We don't play to any backing tracks or anything. So we have the ability to do that, to slow them down, to make them faster, to stretch them out. And also, like, there's certain parts that need to be there, but all the musicians have a license to sort of like also do something different. And the keys are a lot different live, because the keys that I play on the record are a very specific thing. It doesn't mean that Mr. Pharmacist doesn't play those parts, but he goes off live. And, we experiment, and we definitely explore and take it out. And that's fun. And we do covers too. Like, that's really fun. Great way to like sort of interpret other music and turn the younger audiences onto some of the stuff that we love.
Very cool. How much thought did you put into the track sequencing on the record? Is there an arc that you were going for with it? How it opens, how it builds, how it ends?
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of time, but it was very clear to me what it should be.
Okay.
So I didn't labor over it. It was like, here's the sequence, and then maybe once or twice I was like, switch this. But I kind of knew what it felt. I feel like I'm very strong at sequencing records and playlists, and it's sort of like, a mixtape generation and being a DJ sort of thing,
Very cool. Now, one of my favorite tracks is the closer, "A Love So Bold." It felt like you got to a really vulnerable place with, it killing me to watch you hurt yourself. it almost, I mean, it almost, in a way, it's a great way to end the record because it takes you to a very emotional place. And I think as it closes the album, it gives you a great perspective on the whole journey you've been on, because it gets very real on that song.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good insight. I don't look at it in the same way because I'm too close to it. But what I can say is, like, that one was written totally different, where I had encouraged Thomas and Spencer to send me demos, ideas of songs. I said, don't bother like making them too elaborate because I'm going to change stuff anyways. But if you want to write songs and pitch them to me, if I connect with them, I'll use them. And several were sent. And in the end, the only one I really sang on, not because I didn't like the others, but just for time and bandwidth, was A Love So Bold. And that came from Spencer, who's like, you know, best friend, little brother, filmmaking partner, and guitar player. That was one of two he sent that I really liked. And I was like, this is great. I was driving again through down, like in Little Tokyo. Yeah. When I wrote that, and I was picking up a pizza and I was singing it in the car, and I just stopped and I sang it into my voice note, and I left it for probably 5 months plus. And then one day I was like, okay, time to record that. So I took his demo, I put all his tracks down, I took away his drums, programmed new drums. I left his guitars. I had him come in and play more guitars, or maybe I just played guitars on top. Thomas learned the bass and came in and played the bass pretty straight to what was already there, maybe changed a few things. And then I sang it based on the original melody that I had when I wrote that day in Little Tokyo. And, you know, that isn't not normally how something like this worked on the record, but it just fit. And it was just such a sad song musically with that lead guitar part that sounds like a keyboard, that I was like, oh, like, this is the sort of sad melody that fits. And it is a nice way to end a record that starts with such energy to end it so sort of somber. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I love it. Do you look forward to, I mean, is your complete focus right now promoting this record, or are you always like listening to the voice of inspiration for what might be coming next at the same time? Like a next record even? So
I kind of have to keep my head down and like focus. And like right now, the focus is we're writing what will be the fourth, recording what will be the fourth She Wants Revenge record, which we haven't put out an album since 2011. So it's quite a long time. Having said that, there's 3 to 4 Warfield B-sides that I'm going to be releasing throughout the year. Like, but I'm really deep in the She Wants Revenge recording right now. I have the Warfield show in Amsterdam. I have a Warfield show here in Los Angeles, like a warm-up fun one downtown. There's some She Wants Revenge stuff coming up live. And then I think I won't be recording like another Warfield record in the short term, because these B-sides will sort of scratch that itch and sort of feed the fans who want more stuff and the listeners. And then I just want to tour the hell out of it. I've barely scratched the surface touring. I just want to tour and tour and tour and tour until there's no more touring to be done. And then next year, do another album. Like, I could see starting something at the end of the year to put out next year, but I want to just play live. I just want to bring this music to everybody who wants to hear it.
Awesome. Do you write on the road, or is it focus on the road, focus on playing live?
Just trying to live. I mean, I'm also the tour manager, so it's just like, I'm not the kind of person that just sits down and like, the only time I ever write on the road is like, sometimes I'll come up with a riff at sound check and I just put up my phone, record a voice note, and come back to it later.
Nice. Well, that's fantastic. Justin, thank you so much for talking about your career, about the great new record that's out, giving a taste of what's around the corner. I mean, it's just you've got a lot going on. You have an enthusiasm and an excitement for life that just gushes out of you. So it just feels like you're in a great place right now. And if people want to know more about what's going on with you and how to keep tabs on when you're coming through town, how can people find out more about what you're doing?
I mean, the central hub for everything that I do is on Instagram. It's just at Justin Warfield. It's always, I have to update the website because it's a very sort of Gen X sort of thing, having a website, and it needs more updating, but justinwarfield.com. And yeah, like follow me on Spotify, and click on the stuff on Bandsintown so you can be alerted.
Yeah. Oh, that app is so great. Like somebody that I followed like 5 years ago, and like out of nowhere, I'll get, an email. Oh my God, they're coming back. So yeah, Bandsintown. I love that app. And I am going to have my eye out for when Warfield comes through Chicago. So.
Well, for sure, man. It's really been a pleasure. Thanks so much, Tom.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. Thanks so much for talking, and we'll see you on the road, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Have a good one.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.